Welcome back to What the Hype, and welcome back to the wonderful world of Outlander. This week's episode is a first for our show, as we are currently live streaming this episode to our Twitch channel. So if you're finding us on Twitch, welcome to the show. We are a team of podcasters who've been talking about Harry Potter and the issues facing millennials for 20 years. And we've recently embarked on starting a pop culture and fandom focused show to help us and our listeners get into new fandoms. I'm Laura. I'm one of the hosts on What the Hype, and I'm also here with Pam. Pam, hello. Thank you for joining me.
Of course. This is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. But we do have some ground rules to get into first before we start talking Outlander Season 7, right?
Yes, we want to make sure that if you're stumbling across this or you're joining us because you are already listening to any of our other shows, that you know that there's a massive spoiler warning for this episode. Like Laura said, on What the Hype, we try and help introduce people to new fandoms and give them like a quick rundown of things that they might be interested in getting into, but just haven't gotten around to it yet. So we do have an Outlander primer that is available for you all to stream anywhere else you get your podcasts, including YouTube and Spotify. So if you're brand new to the show, then that would be a great place to start. But other than that, this is kind of our no holds barred Outlander episode. So there will be spoilers through season 7, which just wrapped about 2 weeks ago now. So that's your massive spoiler warning.
Yeah. So basically,
join at your own risk.
Yeah, basically we're giving you a very long runway here if you are listening live, or if you're listening to the recorded version of this show that's going to come out in a couple of days. You've been given ample time to hit that pause button, to X out of that window.
Right, exactly.
And we will not be held liable for Outlander spoilers.
Go binge the show, come back and join. This will be here when you're done, when you're ready to join us. And the other thing that I wanted to point out as well is that Laura and I have not really read the books. I've read the first 2, and that's about it. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because most people who are Outlander fans will know that this was a very successful book series before it was turned into a TV show over on Starz. And so while there have been deviations from the books, there are also a lot of plot points and characters from the books that come up. And I just feel like it's important to be transparent about that, so you guys know that any kind of like theorizing we do for season 8, or any kind of connections that we make that don't fall in line with the book, it's not that we're just being purposefully obtuse, it's that we haven't read them. So we're just coming in as fans of the TV show. And yeah, so that's our background here.
Yeah. No, it's a really good call out, because I recognize, and there have been multiple points when I've been binging this show where I've texted Pam and been like, wait a second, I have a question. How does this work? How does that work? And I recognize that there's like a healthy dollop of like, here's how it works, but also we're just talking about the show. There might be more explanations in the books. And from what I understand, the books are dense. And
they're big boys.
Yeah. Biblical in terms of heft and length and everything. So,
well, to kick things off here, now that we've given, like you said, all of our listeners a massive runway to shut this off if they haven't been, caught up on all things Outlander. I wanted to actually start off by checking in with Laura, because the last time we met, you had only seen the first, I want to say 4 episodes, maybe 7 episodes of season 1.
Yeah,
which is a hell of a place to stop and, check in. So we need to talk about, like, very quickly everything that's transpired since. I'd love to just get your general thoughts, and I'm sure listeners would love to hear how you've been faring with the show. Obviously you like it, or you wouldn't be sitting here 7 seasons deep.
Oh, of course. And I think the thing about it is I got sucked in to it, and it was just like, I don't know, the whirlwind of a show that I didn't know that I needed, with like everything going on in the world. It's been so nice to have something that I knew had a really, really long runway ahead of me, and it was going to take me a long time to get through. So basically, when we recorded our primer episode on Outlander for What the Hype, I had not seen or read any Outlander. I knew nothing about it apart from what I'd heard from friends who told me that I'd like it. And we watched a few episodes to kind of be able to have a primer discussion. And after those few episodes, I was hooked. So I kept watching. And this was what, in October that we did this. And I just finished season 7 last week. So basically, in my downtime, when I'm watching TV, what I've been watching has been Outlander almost exclusively.
Yeah, it's really
And
easy to just go down that rabbit hole.
it's so easy to binge. And what I love about it is like, I've been trying to think of the right way to describe it because it captures so many different things that I think make it successful. It's like a historical fiction time travel soap opera, is how I would explain it. Like, how does that strike you? Do you feel similarly or do you feel
Yeah.
different?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's so many family dynamics and so many moving parts. I think that's the soap opera element of it. I love that it blends all of these genres together, like you were talking about the historical and the time travel elements. So you get, historical fiction, you get a little bit of sci-fi. There's obviously a romance element to it, but you also get action, and then there's a little bit of mystery. So it just does a really nice job of peppering in a lot of these little things. It really kind of is something for everybody here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even at points, I live with my boyfriend, Mark, and he didn't sit down and watch the entire show with me, but he would walk through the room and he would be intrigued enough to sit down for a few minutes and kind of watch what was going on. And he definitely would ask me questions to keep up throughout, to be like, okay, what are Jamie and Claire up to this week? um, it was really, really fun to follow.
We're just
And
trying to stop another massive war from happening. No big
I know,
deal.
and failing, by the
And
way, like,
failing. Yeah. Time is really the big enemy in the shows.
yeah,
They're
for
constantly
sure.
racing against the clock.
Yeah. No, the way they play with time is really interesting in the show. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that during our discussion. Um, but yeah, it's just been a really, really fun show to sink my teeth into. And now that I'm all caught up, I'm kind of bummed because now
Because you
I'm
have to
like,
wait.
I don't have a catalog of hours and hours of TV that I get to catch up on. And I feel like everyone else had to, there was a pretty massive wait, I understand, between season 7, part 1 and season 7, part 2, like over a year. I didn't have to do that. So I got to be spoiled and basically binge all the way up to where the show is now. And now I'm like, well, shit, like, I want more.
Now you get to suffer through what the fandom likes to refer to as Droughtlander.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. See,
That's
now
so
you're stuck
funny.
in Droughtlander like the rest of us.
It's probably a double entendre as well, because like you're missing the story, but you're also missing seeing Jamie naked.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or at least that's what I would be thinking of. I don't know about others.
It is kind of funny that this show kind of has like I feel like it gets like this reputation for being like for like horny housewives, because there
Yeah.
is a lot of, especially in the first couple of seasons, there's a lot of sex and a lot of nudity. Fun fact, they actually didn't have an intimacy coordinator on the show for a really long time. I think that
Really?
yeah, because they just like, I
Whew.
mean, this show started 10 years ago. So when you think about the trajectory of intimacy coordinators in Hollywood, it's still a fairly new thing. I think it was about maybe like 2 or 3 seasons ago only that they hired an intimacy coordinator. And
Yikes.
you can tell like there's such a stark contrast in how they film sex scenes now versus how they were filming them in the first few seasons. They were very racy, and they're still like beautifully done now. It's just they're a little bit more artsy, a little bit more tasteful. There's like nudity when there needs to be, but not all the time. So they've really
Yeah.
kind of toned it down.
Yeah, there was a lot of nudity, especially in season 1. I
Mm-hmm.
just felt like I was seeing all kinds of parts of people that I was like, "Oh wow, there we go." Yeah, that's so fascinating to me that they didn't, especially given the majority of this story takes place in 18th century Scotland. What other kinds of scenes of a sexual nature, although I hate to even describe it that way, but just like scenes of assault
Oh
and
yeah.
just like
Yeah.
how prevalent those are, especially in the early seasons. It's kind of shocking to me that they didn't have an intimacy coordinator for those.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we're going to get to some more like, I guess, a little bit more of that talk later on this as we go through this episode, since we are talking about season 7. And that kind of comes up, but not as much as it has maybe in the last few seasons that we've gotten. But overall, here, now that, season 7's in the can, what did you think of it as a whole? Like, did you feel like it was a fairly strong season? For me, I thought the season was good, but I have no concept of how it plays in full because there was such a long wait in between. And so it almost feels like 2 seasons in one.
Yeah, I will say, as somebody who was able to go straight from part 1 to part 2, it did feel a little weird. It was a little jarring. I don't even know exactly what to attribute it to. Just the atmosphere felt different. Somehow the writing felt different. I think there's certain things in season 7 that were kind of rushed that made it harder to be as invested in those story arcs. So I wouldn't say that it was a bad season, but it was definitely not one of the strongest. Like, it may be a cop out to be like season 1 is the best, but I it really is so good. And even for me, following that, season 2 and season 4 are favorites for me. But I felt like this season, I felt like they were trying to like make major moves in a lot of different character arcs across time and across geographies. And I don't think they had enough airtime to do all of that justice and do it well. Like you said, Pam, it feels like some of this would have maybe played out more evenly if they had spread it across 2 actual seasons as opposed to 2 halves of a season.
Yeah. So I think it does make sense that they are trying to, it really does feel like they're trying to wrap up a lot of loose ends here. I mean, you have, like the death of Ian Murray, not young Ian, but Ian
Yeah.
Sr. And not the last time we go back to Scotland, based on the way that, things end with Jamie and Claire at the end of this season. But like at the time, you do assume that that might be the last time they ever go back.
And they were there for like 30 seconds, it felt
Right,
like.
exactly. Yeah, and then also like they wrapped up the whole like Mr. and Mrs. Bug storyline from last season, which was like a big dark cloud looming over the head of that was like a huge jump scare for me when Mr. Bug popped up
Yeah, for
again.
sure. And honestly, I kind of felt like the way they wrapped it up was anticlimactic.
A little bit.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you figure that, if Mr. Bug is trying to ruin young Ian's life, Mr. Bug's going to go. We all know that's what it's going to come to. But that was actually a really good ramp up of tension over the course of many, many episodes. And it just kind of felt like when the climactic moment approached, William was just like, dead, and
Right,
it was
exactly.
over.
He came
So,
in the midnight hour, like for the
yeah,
last minute as a hero. And yeah.
I kind of found myself wanting for a little more there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate what they were trying to do with that, which is basically like set up some kind of like they already have a pre-established bond, Ian and William, right? Because they meet each other in the first half. Again, it's so hard
Right.
to remember like almost like what happens in this season and what happened in season 6 because they really had this huge gap in between the two parts, but they do meet and they kind of bond over him rescuing William. When he finds them in the middle of the woods in the first half of the season, and so then it's like I think Outlander really likes to do this like full circle moment where like the good guys, like one of them saves each other, and then the other one will come in and like save them again. So it's like a life for a life, and so then and in like in the case of William and Ian too, it's like a nice parallel between Jamie and John's trajectory as well, because they kind of meet as well as a result of a life debt. So it's not really a life debt in the same way, but you can kind of tell that they feel some kind of like compulsion to help
Yeah.
the other out because like one saved the other first.
Right. And the fact that like young Ian obviously views Jamie as the closest thing to a father figure he has. And for William, that's Lord John. Even though he's
Mm-hmm.
Jamie's biological son, Lord John raised him. So again, like
Yeah.
I love that you brought up the point about the parallel journeys these two pairs are on with regard to their friendship. And I think when you add the fact that like, yeah, Jamie and John are also the father figures for Ian and William, I think it's just really nice
Mm-hmm.
how they
Yeah.
tied all that together.
Well, we're going to get to a couple of other things shortly, things we liked and also things that we didn't like. But first, we're going to take a little break to pay the bills here and keep the lights on. And then we'll be back with more Outlander talk shortly. All right. Well, what are some other things that really kind of stuck out, for better or for worse? I don't know if we want to keep on the negativity train
Yeah,
or.
so the thing is, I don't feel negative towards it. I think it's one of those things where I criticize because I care and I got
Of
so
course.
invested so quickly in the show. But there's definitely positives to be had. For me, this isn't even just a season 7 thing. I just love young Ian. I love his
He's so
character.
sweet.
He's such a sweetheart. And what I love
Yeah.
about him is in his entirety, of time on the show, he's always been a character who had a very clear moral center. And I feel like a lot of times, like super ethical, very moral characters the downside of them is that they can be kind of boring, but he's not. And what have loved about his character is that he has actually had an arc. And despite the fact that he already has like the good sense about how to treat other people and like how to exist in a society, he still struggles with the day to day challenges of being human. And he still had things happen to him beyond his control that completely changed his trajectory. Like, obviously, this isn't season 7, but when he goes off and lives with the Mohawk, I mean, that completely, even though it didn't change like the moral center that makes him Ian, it did completely change his character in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, that's a huge turning point for him. And I think a lot of people too that maybe didn't enjoy him as much before are really starting to enjoy his story arc after that fact,
Yeah.
because he really comes back transformed. But you're right, like he is still in a lot of ways the same, like that moral compass, despite the bad stuff that does happen to him over the course of the show is still there.
Yeah. I also loved, and we'll probably get into more characters that, made reappearances that were really fun to see, but I did love Buck McKenzie coming back the way he
Mm-hmm.
did, and how there was like this multi-episode arc of the kids trying to convince Roger and Bree in the present that there was some kind of Scottish like folklore creature that was stealing snacks. And they thought, they were like, oh gosh, like the kids are making this up just so that they can eat all the snack food. And it was like, no, 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 they were telling the truth and he's creeping on you. He's like staring in through your windows. So I liked that a lot. And I thought it was a nice like touch point to also have that reunion of sorts between he and Roger. after
Yeah,
everything that happened
they
there.
really, yeah, they really get a chance to make amends, which again, like that it makes so much sense from a, you know, a penultimate season standpoint, because I don't know how much we're going to see of him in season 8. Probably not very much, since when we leave off with Roger and Bree, they're set to reunite with Claire and Jamie again, and it kind of seems like Buck is not really ready to go back to his original timeline. He feels ashamed for how he treated his wife at the time, and he thinks that she's better off without him. So the assumption is that he's going to stay back, or he'll go back to the future, or we'll go somewhere else entirely. But
Yeah, it'll just be interesting to see like how that comes together to explain his year of death.
right,
Cuz like
right.
in this season we finally got the answer, or was that part 1? I think it was part 1 of season 7. The answer to like Jamie and Claire's obituary saying they died in a fire.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
you know, their house does burn down, they're just not in it.
Mhm.
And
Shoddy reporting, you never know.
yeah. Yeah, well, and it was Tom, wasn't it, who wrote the obituary because he
He
just
thought they had
assumed
died
he
because he didn't
assumed they
see
had
them.
died.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really cool to see that kind of brought full circle, because that obituary is something that we've been talking about since season 2, right? Like Roger found it, and then it came out in retrospect that Frank had found it, and that was why he decided he was taking Bree and moving to England, because he was like, she's going to leave me and go back to the past anyway. And she dies there.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It is something that they've been like, it had been looming over their heads, and it's interesting that as soon as they pass that, they realize that the real like dark cloud has always been the American Revolutionary War, which I know that you're a big like American history nerd too. So have you been having fun with the
Oh my
American
gosh.
seasons?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. Honestly, that's why, and obviously, like, it's not just one particular season. Some of this does run together, to be perfectly
Hmm.
honest, especially since I've watched it all
In one
in
go,
in one
basically.
go, where I'm like, wait, which season was it that they established Fraser's Ridge? But really everything that came with them settling in the Americas and establishing Fraser's Ridge and building their community there, especially when, Bree and Roger come along and they're able to have like the happy family unit that I think they were all looking for and weren't necessarily getting in the way they wanted before. Like, that was really satisfying.
Hmm.
And seeing how close in time all of the stuff in Scotland happened to the American Revolution. This is something that I remember when I realized it, I felt like kind of stunned, because for some reason I did not realize that the Battle of Culloden in Scotland only happened like 2 or 3 decades before the American Revolution. It was like 1740s. American Revolution is like 1770s.
Right. The fact that the Jamie is old enough to fight in both.
Yeah. Well, and what's crazy about this is I was fascinated by this, so I looked it up, and that was actually a thing that happened. A lot of people who fought in the failed Scottish Rebellion ended up settling in the United States and fighting on behalf of the rebels. So it
Hmm.
was really, really cool. I love the
Yeah, yeah.
connection, because, like, I remember when I first started watching this, you at one point had mentioned something about the American Revolution. And me, just in my ignorance, not knowing how close together these things
You're
happened,
like,
I
how's
was
that going
like,
to work?
wait, so are they going back in time? Like, are they going forward in time a couple hundred years? Like, I didn't have any sense for how close they were. And also just seeing like the rapid development of medicine and technology that we know was happening at the time, getting to see these characters go from the conditions that we maybe saw them in the first season to, I think, standards of living that maybe we would more recognize in the modern age was really cool. and just having that realization of like, yeah, that's how quickly things
Mm-hmm.
developed, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like their version of our version of, like the internet and like the rise of tech and social media
Exactly.
and stuff.
Oh my gosh. Well, from now on, when we're on our other show, Millennial, talking about how fast the internet developed, I'm just going to be like, this must be how Jamie felt when he got to the American Revolution.
Well, speaking of speedy storylines, I didn't want to not bring up you had a really good point about how the whole thing with Bree and Roger and Jemmy getting kidnapped just kind of felt really rushed. And
Yeah.
I totally agree. I also like, again, to remind you all, if you're listening live, Laura and I have not read the book, so I don't know if like it happens this way in the books or not. Like, I had no idea they were going to go back in time further than, the point where Claire comes in, basically, or to the last point that they left, especially because, Rob is searching for the Spaniard's gold, right? Or like the Jacobite gold. So it turns out that it ends up being a moot point because he doesn't ever go back in time. And that actually makes a lot more sense because not everybody can go back. And so it would make sense that like it would just be too convenient for like the big bad kidnapper to also be a time traveler or be able to time travel too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like it
So,
was, and I think again, it was just how quickly they pushed through the series of events because it starts with Roger accidentally passing around his, Hitchhiker's Guide to Time Travel journal when he was teaching a Gaelic class to the community, and Rob Cameron, who works with Bree, happened to be there. And I guess he happened to page through enough of that journal that he got the general gist of what Roger was talking about. And when he came over for dinner, he went in the study. We know he read some of the letters that they had just kind of sitting out in the box that Jamie and Claire sent them in. And then it goes to like the really flimsy, like, hey, want to come have a sleepover with my nephew, who, by the way, doesn't live with me, but he lives across the street from me. And ultimately, Bree and Roger immediately jumping to the assumption that Rob has taken Jemmy back in time to go after the Jacobite gold. And I remember I paused and I was like, wait a second. I had to rewind and make sure I hadn't missed something. And I found myself like yelling at the TV, being like, why would he need to go back in time to get that? It's buried in America.
yeah, they just got to hop on a plane.
He can just kidnap Jemmy to America in the present to get it. They don't got to go through the stones in Scotland to try and get this Jacobite gold. And even when, the scarf was left there at the stones, Jemmy's scarf was left there. I was like, really? I just found myself thinking too many people can time travel. Like, if he
Yeah.
took Jemmy into the past, this is a problem because too many people are time traveling. And then when he showed up after Roger had gone back already, he showed up in Bree's kitchen and threatened her. I was like, here it is. Like, I just couldn't understand why these characters wouldn't think of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It just, and I think what bothers me is it just kind of felt out of character for the two of them. Like,
Yeah,
really
they
seems,
definitely jump to conclusions because of the scarf, which like,
yeah,
and I don't, okay, I might be misremembering, but obviously we know that you don't need to blood sacrifice or anything to go through the stones, but Galus assumed that you did. So that like kind of opens up a whole another can of worms. Like, did it work for her because she was always able to time travel? I'm thinking probably so, since she's or Roger's a descendant of hers, and apparently like his whole bloodline can kind of time travel ish, except for maybe, well, we don't even know about Dougal, but yeah. So like that kind of comes into play. Or if like, it is just like whoever can like hear the buzzing. That's the only part that kind of confused me because I kind of could buy like the quick fix of going through the stones if he was just going to use it as like a portal to get to America at any time.
Yeah. But I don't know. It just
But you're
thinking
right. It was a
about,
little too like, oh, the scarf is here and like the pin is leading to the scarf. And
yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's just thinking about that. If they had done that, they would have had to get on a ship, which would have taken like 6
right.
weeks to get to America and then go find the gold. Whereas it's like, get on a plane and then you can rent a car in the
Yeah, that
US
sounds great.
and get there a lot more quickly. And it was kind of funny too, because Rob Cameron in that scene basically was like, yeah, it was a nice touch that I left the scarf there. So I mean, ultimately, I think all of this was in service of getting Roger to go back to 1739 so he could find his father. And ultimately, I think that's like the jumping off for the spin-off show, Blood of My Blood, that we're going to talk about a little
Yes,
bit later towards the end here. So I really feel like that was the point. Like,
I think so too. Yeah, and that's why I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know if like it happens this way in the books or not, but it just felt a little too convenient that it seems like the reason we were really going back was to spend a little bit more time with Jamie's father, Brian, and to kind of get a sense for the man that he was because we never
right.
met him before. And the only like we only really know of him through what Jamie has said, similar to his mother. We only really know about her through what like Jocasta and Myrta have told Claire. So yeah, like it definitely felt very like almost like backdoor piloty, but not really.
Yeah. And I mean, I can forgive it for that because I
Yeah.
understand there needed to be a through line,
Yeah.
especially with the kind of story they want to tell in
Yeah.
the
And
spinoff.
especially at the end when Bree gets there and she has that moment with her grandpa who doesn't know
Yeah.
he's her grandpa and he's like, you remind me so much of my wife. And it's like, okay, like this is our touchstone.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Although it was nice to see them connect since Brianna was named for him,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yes, definitely. Well, I think this is a good time to take another quick break before we jump into a couple of other storylines we really enjoyed, characters that we love, including Lord John and obviously also William. And probably we'll talk a little bit more about a couple of other characters that we brought up briefly, but didn't really sink our teeth into.
Cool. So, Pam,
Mm-hmm.
where do you want to start? Do you want to start with Lord John or with William? I feel like it can
Ooh,
go either way because
I
they're
think
connected.
I think we should start with Lord John because that makes sense. And I
Yeah.
feel like it feeds into William.
Man, and this is where you get into some of the soap opera stuff. And I don't
Yeah.
say that, by the way, as like a pejorative because
No, no, no.
this is kind of like a Marie Kondo moment where I'm like, I love mess. Like the mess is what keeps me coming back.
Yeah.
But just I mean, the way the whole storyline plays out with Lord John's friendship with Jamie over the years and him being in love with unrequited love with Jamie. Jamie knows it, but he's like, actually, I guess pretty progressive by 1800 standards or 1700 standards. Um, but yeah, things take a really interesting turn in season 7, part 2, when Lord John and Claire are under the impression for a couple of days that Jamie has died at sea. And it all goes downhill from there, right?
Yeah, yeah, it really does. I mean, so first of all, they have to get married because Claire is found out to be passing information to the Confederate soldiers by the redcoats. And so the only way that Lord John can make sure she doesn't get executed is to marry her. And so he does, but she's also like in like an extreme period of grief And she, like, to the point where she's suicidal. And he's also like grieving because they both love Jamie, but in different ways. And yeah, and then they end up like having hate sex together. And that was kind of crazy. Like this whole thing too, like is I thought they were gonna drag out the marriage for way longer.
Yeah.
And like this is another example of like a plot line that I really thought was going to get dragged out and then was resolved within like 2 episodes.
Yeah. No, I feel like by modern standards, Claire and John could like legally have their marriage annulled because it didn't last very long
Right.
at all. Understandably, because Jamie comes back and he's like, surprise, I'm not dead. Um, but it gets really complicated when Lord John informs Jamie that he has carnal knowledge of his wife.
That's such a Lord John thing to say.
I know. I know. I love his manner of speaking. And
Me
to be
too.
honest with you, he could have never said anything.
That's true. It
Honestly,
was like out of respect, he
yeah.
told Jamie, yeah. Okay. So when this was all playing out, I was like, this makes absolutely no sense. And then I was like, no, it actually kind of does. Cause like, if you look back at like the history of even Claire's relationship with Lord John, like there's always been a lot of tension there. And I think there's a lot, like, even though there's love there too and respect, there's also a lot of animosity there as well. And we see that when he first comes to Fraser's Ridge with a much younger William, and she has to take care of him when he's sick.
Yeah.
And they kind of have this like big spat over Jamie. So I guess it would make sense that they would also be like grieving in a way that is like almost violent as well, or like not almost, like very violent.
Yeah. Like they're both of them definitely feel a level of possession. There's even a point during the hate sex montage, because it is a montage. That's the other thing that it was shot in a very interesting way. But Claire even starts hitting Lord John and saying he's not yours to mourn. She's
Right,
basically
exactly.
staking her claim and being like, I loved him more.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
and like they both acknowledged that they were not having sex with each other. They were like maybe physically doing that, but they were both making love to Jamie
Mm-hmm.
in their grief. And it seems like Jamie's able to get over this pretty quickly with Claire. Like he doesn't stay mad at her very long. He stays mad at John though.
Yeah, that did you feel like that was a little out of character? I know
Yeah.
Jamie is very possessive, very selfish, but also like he knows Lord John is gay. And so
Yeah.
that's why I felt like he knows that there's like no actual love or like attraction there. And the fact that like I was like honestly shocked that he didn't go, like he basically turned him over to the Confederates and left him for dead and had no remorse. I think that was the part that felt out of character for me a little bit. Like I could have seen him like start to do that and then maybe like have second thoughts and then try and go back to rescue him. But the fact that he had like absolutely no remorse about the fact that he like this man almost died. And
Yeah.
also
Well,
like that he like the only reason they were like married in the first place and like in a position to like have hate sex at all is because he married his wife so that his wife wouldn't be executed, is like it just kind of felt like it was a little much. He needed to cool his jets a bit.
yeah. Well, and also when they got word that he was sentenced to be hanged, Jamie
Right.
had like
He's
no
like,
reaction
fuck
to
that
that.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
After like he was like basically throwing away decades of friendship. It also like conveniently forgot that that's like the only father his biological son has ever known
Right. Right.
too.
He raised your son and never outed you. And mind you, like Lord John's, his at that point, his loyalties have been to the crown. So he's
Right.
raising William as what, an earl,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because William knows that Lord John isn't his dad, right? He thinks his bio dad is dead. who was the Earl of
Right.
something. I will say, remembering all the names and titles can be really
Tough.
challenging in this show.
Yeah.
But like, William kept that secret. And to be honest with you, William kept so many of Jamie's secrets. Or not
John.
William, John
Yeah.
kept so many of Jamie's
Oh, yeah.
secrets over the
Yeah.
course of the show that he really should have thrown him under the bus for if his real loyalties were to the king, you know?
And he also like he broke so many rules. He's to save him like countless times. Almost married Brianna too, even though she was trying to blackmail him out of love and respect for her parents. Like that man has put his neck on the line so many times.
Yeah, he really
But the carnal
has.
knowledge was just too, it was too much.
It was a bridge too far. Well, and what the other thing I loved, it was a quick moment, and I had to look it up to make sure that I wasn't misunderstanding slang. But there's literally a point when Jamie's like questioning Claire about what happened and all the details. And because Lord John is gay, Jamie specifically asked Claire, like, did he put it, you know, there?
Yeah. And Claire, I also caught that on the second watch, and I was like, wait a minute. And I had to go look it up as well.
Yeah. And so this is where Jamie kind of shocks me, because I'm like, you're abnormally progressive for a man of your time period.
Right.
So like when things like that happen, I'm like, what happened to Jamie here? And maybe it's just a stress reaction where it's like he defaults to, you know, whatever social standards were of the time. But in general, his character is actually like unusually open and accepting of things that would not be commonplace in the 18th century. So
yeah, he's definitely, I mean, he learned real quick that Claire wasn't going to take it. And as a result, he is way more progressive as a male character for his time.
Yeah.
There's still some stuff that he like clutches his pearls at, like when she shows him a picture of Brie in a bathing suit, and he's like, she's naked, Claire. And she's like, she's in a bathing suit. It's fine. Honestly, like to me, like I said, it was really just the fact that he left Lord John for dead that just like I could understand feeling animosity, but like that just felt like a little too out of character for him, in my opinion. So I'm glad we're on the same page there.
Yeah, totally. Like decking him in the face, totally in character.
Understandable. For yeah. Giving him up for a second too, like, yeah, okay, you know, but the fact that he never went back.
That's the thing. I was fully expecting after Jamie did that for him to be like, oh shit, now I got to go get him, you know? So yeah, that was interesting.
He just went home, reconciled with Claire. They had sex and then everything was fine.
Everything's right with the world.
Yeah. Well, speaking about other angry people, it's very clear that William gets his temper from Jamie, his real dad, because that also was like another shoe that I've been waiting to see like when it was going to drop. So William finally discovered that his real father is Jamie, who was the stable hand in his youth. So that was a big revelation. And also I was honestly like surprised that the way that this happened, because you hardly ever hear Lord John refer to William as like Jamie's son.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that it was just like one big accident and he happened to overhear, like instead of just saying like William's on his way or like William is blah, blah, blah.
Right.
He said your son.
Your son's almost here or something like that. And yeah, what really adds insult to injury for William about all of this, I think, is that everyone else knew.
Yeah.
He's salty about that. And I get it. I'd be pissed.
Even Rachel, we haven't talked too much about the Quakers, Rachel and Denny, but I really enjoyed them a lot this season too. I love Denny's relationship with Claire as well, as like two people of medicine, and Rachel's romance with Ian is so sweet.
I know.
But
and that was the thing that made me really happy for Ian, because his romance with her is just so wholesome and sweet. And he's a sweet angel. and deserves it.
Yeah. But yeah, even she was like, oh, that. He was like, you knew too. Poor
Yeah,
guy.
I know. Well, and I mean, it really throws his entire identity into question because not only was he raised as a member of British aristocracy, and he's on the front lines of trying to suppress the American Revolution. Now he finds out that he's actually the bastard son of a Highlander.
Yeah, and a traitor. Like he's
Yep.
so like it's so funny that William sees things so black and white. But if he knew half the stuff that his father, right, the man who he grew up thinking was his father, or like considering his father his whole life, if he knew half of the times that he's bent the rules just for Jamie, he would probably like faint, because he's so like strict in his viewpoint. Even though John tries to tell him too that it's not like black and white. He tries to tell him a couple times that it's not black and white.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, William, these last couple of episodes of season 7 are like kind of rough for William because he gets friend zoned pretty hard by Rachel.
yeah. There was a minute where I thought maybe they were gonna soften him up a little bit
Yeah,
by pairing them together. But I like her with Young Ian, like we were saying. So
I
I'm
agree.
I'm pleased with that match.
I agree. So
Yeah.
that happens. And then it's like the 1-2 punch of friend zoned and your dad's not your dad.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
actually, your bio dad is this guy who has been around and who you just didn't know who he was to you.
Mm-hmm. So, speaking of potential romantic interest, he also ends up meeting Jane, who is a prostitute out in Philadelphia. Initially, is introduced to her as Arabella before she tells him her real name, and this also comes as a result of him just like going through the grief and shock of finding out what his true lineage is. And she's a really interesting character.
Yeah, I liked
Yeah, did
her.
you? Yeah, I liked her too. It was too bad that she didn't make it through this season.
Nope.
But yeah, so we meet Jane, and we eventually meet her little sister Fanny, and they seek William out again after they spend the night at the brothel together because they're hiding out. Essentially, she was trying to protect her sister from not having to go into the sex trade, and she ends up killing I think it's like a captain, isn't it? Like somebody higher up in the ranks.
Yeah, and I forget his name to be honest, but the whole purpose was he bought Fanny's maidenhood, as they called it, and like she's a child, so it's pretty gross. And yeah, Jane was just being a good big sister.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that I did not expect though was this big revelation that they leave us with at the end of the final episode, which is that Jane and Fanny could potentially be related to Jamie and Claire via Faith, who was the baby they maybe thought they lost in Paris.
Yeah,
That was
and
huge.
that was honestly a shock to me because, to be clear with you, I fully thought they were setting up to kill Claire at the end of
Oh
season
yeah.
7. And
Yeah.
I was
When
like,
she got shot, I got really emotional.
yeah. Well, and also just the way that the entire finale episode was shot, particularly when they were shooting Claire, it was very dreamlike, kind of hazy. And she was having lots of like direct one-to-one conversations with each of the characters. And they felt very much like parting conversations where she's, passing on some wisdom to them to keep in mind. So I was like, this is going to be interesting if they kill her off. And then we have a season left of these
Without
characters
her.
kind of like dealing with the aftermath of that and the fact that the American Revolution is still happening.
Right. Right.
But yeah,
That's the other thing too, that like, cause I was like, wait a minute, like, where are we here? And thanks to Hamilton, it's a lot easier to remember when all these battles happen. I was like, okay, the Battle of Monmouth, that's still kind of like in the middle, but not really.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So there's still a ways to go.
Yeah.
But she does know that the puzzle pieces are in place. You know, we didn't really get to it, but she does meet Marquis de Lafayette, who plays a huge role in helping America win. So
I loved like all the random like historical figures that turned up, like George Washington is actually in the show a couple times.
Mm-hmm. Or like Jamie being in like the painting, like the Revolutionary War painting. I love that.
Benedict Arnold is there.
That was a good one.
Lafayette.
Charles Lee, the little Charles Lee call out. Yeah. And it's like, of course he's having a fit and like, you know, wanting Jamie to be like there right away.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So actually I was thinking so much of the song in Hamilton.
When he's like, he shits the bed at the Battle of Monmouth.
Yeah. But no, also when they were
said that he was going to be working under Charles Lee, I was like, not Charles Lee.
Yeah, I know. He shits the bed.
Yeah.
Isn't that how the lyrics go? He shits the bed at the Battle of Monmouth. It was really, really cool. And yeah, you're right. The Hamilton knowledge comes in handy when you're watching a show
like with like the dates, like what goes where. Shout out to Lin-Manuel Miranda.
I know, really, he did take like a whole chapter of American history that can come across kind of dry and made it accessible for a lot of people. But I'll also say I think Outlander kind of does that too, because
like, you know, especially with like with the Jacobite stuff, which maybe, and if you let us know if you guys want more Outlander talk, because we obviously do want to talk about it again when new episodes start coming out. But you know, we'll hop on YouTube and talk a little bit more about specific seasons if you guys want us to. So yeah, just let us know. But going back to the Jacobite stuff too, like that gets really convoluted with like the British line to the throne. And so like Outlander also helps me remember that like the Stuart line was initially the line before it shifted over to the line that we have today, which is where like Queen Elizabeth II comes in and stuff like that. So
exactly. Yeah. No, I think it can be really easy, especially as Americans looking at like the royal lines of succession in Europe. And I think it can be really easy for people to forget that like it wasn't a straight direct line to the Windsors.
Right. The Windsors. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
They definitely, there was a lot of fuckery, I think we can say. But yeah, no, it's really cool. And I just love all the historical touch points, because I will say when I'm watching this show and I get to something like that, like I definitely read up more on the Jacobite rebellion and Charles Stuart and everything because of this show. Like I don't think I would have been inspired to just go look it up independently. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's actually making me a little more historically aware too.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, as Americans, we don't, unfortunately, this curriculum in public schools doesn't really value world history as much. I'm sure it's the same in other countries, right? You kind of are like your world point in history is more centered on your country. But yeah, we skip over a lot of that. So it's cool to watch a show like this that is, you know, like they try and be as historically accurate as possible. So you do get like a little bit of information, and then you can go and fall down the rabbit holes when, you know, if it suits your fancy and whatnot.
But back to that cliffhanger. And then I know we're going to get to some other callbacks that we got this season too. I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with this. Fanny is actually Faith. Yes. The cliffhanger that they've left us with, because last time we saw Faith, we thought that she was a deceased infant in Paris.
Yeah. Oh, like, well, and a sidebar to that, Master Raymond showing up, the gasp, I gasped.
I was like, what? Well, and that was another reason I thought she was dying. Because I
Right.
was
Because she started
like,
seeing like the
ooh,
raven again, or like the, what is it? Not the
yeah,
crane, the egret, or the heron. That was what she saw, the heron, when
yeah,
she was, yeah, dying as a result of what we thought was a miscarriage, but maybe not. But yeah, like, it was one of those moments where it's like, you saw the hooded figure and I was like, they're not going to bring that guy back. There's no way. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then lo and behold, there he is. And you don't really know if it's a hallucination or not, but then she wakes up and she's better. So who knows?
yeah, yeah. Again, like, I feel like this is something I would have liked to have seen a twist like this play out over the course of multiple episodes. And that could just be a personal thing. I think I just like a little bit more build up in my
Yeah.
pacing. And I feel like that's really what made me fall in love with the earlier seasons of the show is the pacing was so good.
Mhm. And to that point, this is the shorter season. I think what did we
Yeah.
get, like 10 episodes total for season 7? I think season 1 and 2 are about 16, if I remember
I thought
correctly.
season 7 was also 16.
Yeah, I think they used to be a little bit longer. So, um something
Well,
to keep in
season
mind,
6
the
was
shorter.
really short.
Yes. Yes, it was. Yeah, I think that might have been the season that they did with like the writer's strike. Don't quote me, or COVID. It was one of the two, but
Yeah.
they kind of got slammed twice. They got slammed a little bit with COVID and then they got slammed with the writer's strike.
Yeah.
So,
And that actually might explain why some of what's happening in season 7 feels a little weird pacing wise. It could be that it was stuff that was intended to play out in season 6, right? And kind of lead into season
mhm.
7 to give more breathing room. That actually makes sense to me.
Yeah. Camille is a person who's joining us live, says yes, more Outlander. So duly
Yay.
noted.
Yeah. Welcome, Camille.
We would love to do more Outlander for you guys. Well, speaking of what we have to look forward to, season 8, final season for Claire and Jamie and our regular cast of characters specifically. So, um, oh, Katie is saying, she's giving us a little bit more context. There's over 2 books in season 7.
Yeah. So honestly,
So that makes
Katie.
a lot of sense.
Oh, yeah. And Camille is saying that theory also makes sense about the writer's strike since it's $2. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Katie and Camille, for calling that out. Cause yeah, I don't know. For me, like that's something that I can forgive a show for
Mm-hmm.
if there were
Like outside
circumstances.
circumstances, yeah. But
Yeah.
trying to fit too, but I have Outlander, like the OG Outlander book on my bookshelf. I'm looking at it right now. It is a big boy. So fitting 2 books into one season, that's a lofty feat.
Yeah. It is. That's a lot of ground to cover. That explains a
Mm-hmm.
lot. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very curious to know, especially since looks like we have a couple of book readers here. Is Rob Cameron a traveler in the books? Can he time travel? Because it feels like he cannot in the show. And that is honestly, and this is something I spoke about a little bit earlier in the stream. If I had to pick the one thing that actually bothered me this season, it was how
It was the
rushed
kidnapping.
that whole thing was.
Fair.
So I'm very curious. And also, in general, if you're a book reader, we would love to hear your feedback, like Pam said earlier in the show, on areas where we might be missing something because we haven't read the books.
Mm-hmm. So to start wrapping up our conversation, and we've had so much fun talking about all of this stuff with you all this week. Do you have any like major hopes for season 8? I'm personally just really excited for them to go back to Scotland. I think that obviously there has to be some big dramatic twist, because if there weren't, it wouldn't be Outlander. But
Of
I like the
course.
idea of them ending the show where it started and just like sending Claire and Jamie off into the sunset peacefully. I think that would be really nice.
Yeah, I agree. I want them to bring it full circle. I also want to know who was the cloaked person in the pilot episode that was looking at Claire from the town
Ah,
square. I want to know who
yes.
that was. And maybe we
Yeah,
already know.
that's true. We do know that it can't be Jamie, because Jamie can't time travel.
Right. Although, do we feel like there's trying to leave some breadcrumbs that he might have something, because he started having dreams about Roger and Bree and the kids in the present. And he was speaking about things that he had no like frame of reference for based on the time period that he lived in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that is interesting for sure. Like that and they start setting up him dreaming about the future in previous seasons as well.
mhm.
I think right after him and Claire reunite at the print shop shortly after that, he asks if Brie has a birthmark by her ear. That's
That's
before he even
right. I
meets
totally
her.
forgot that he asked
Yeah.
about that early.
Yeah. But then the fact that he like starts like he sees like Fiona and remembers her name and like, can clearly see the future. That is, yeah. I would like more answers to that for sure.
Yeah. So is it like, can he travel, or is he just like clairvoyant
Mm,
across time or something? Yeah, it'll
yeah.
be interesting to see how that goes. I love how they've discovered that they can sort of send letters from the past to the present. I think that's really cool. And I definitely want to see more of that.
Yes.
But yeah, ultimately, I think the desire is like for Jamie and Claire to just get to live their 18th century homesteading life and be happy doing
Mm-hmm.
that. But then also seeing like ultimately what do Bree and Roger and the kids do. I feel like it's kind of implying at this point that they're going to stay in the past, but
Mm-hmm.
they also bought Lallybrock in the present. They're renovating it.
Maybe
So
Fiona's
like
gonna get 2 houses. She's gonna be house rich.
I guess. Any
Well,
other like predictions or things that you want to see?
that's the big one. I would love. I mean, we know that Rachel's pregnant. I think it would be really cute to see young Ian as a dad.
Yeah.
I would love to see some more reconciliation between William and Jamie and Lord John. I think that would be a nice way to tie. It would just be really sad if like his whole story arc was that he just like died bitter or something and young.
Yeah.
Because
No, I
there's like some,
agree.
like uh, obviously like he's met Ian and he remembers meeting Brianna, who's his sister. I think it would be nice to see like him and Brianna meet again with the knowledge that they're brother and sister.
Yeah.
I think that would be really sweet. But yeah, who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? I'm sure it's going to be a wild ride no matter what happens.
Yeah.
But
It will.
go on.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
I was just going to say before we get season 8, we're actually going to get the Outlander spinoff, which is set to come out sometime this year.
That's right. What's that about?
So it's called Outlander Blood of My Blood, and it's going to focus on the lives and courtships of the parents of Jamie, who are Brian and Ellen, and Claire's parents, who are Henry and Julia. So I'm going to be honest with you, Laura. I wasn't super excited about this, but I did watch the teaser that came out. And I think the teaser did it for me. I think I'll be tuning in.
Yeah, I think so too. If for nothing else, because I'm a completionist and
Oh, that's fair.
I feel like I've already been so pulled in by this story, and the fact that we now know from Outlander season 7 that Roger's dad ended up back in the 1730s before going back. And I just wonder how like his newfound ability to time travel is going to play into this, you
Yeah.
know?
As long as there are no more Gayla Duncan jump scares, I think we'll be good.
Man, when I saw her again in season 7, I was like, this bitch, she's everywhere.
She is everywhere.
I mean, I love her. I love her character. I think she's fascinating, but legitimately, both times that she's cropped up, after we didn't think we were going to see her again, I legitimately had a similar reaction where I was like, oh,
Yeah. It's like, oh no.
not Gayless. But yeah, I'm really, really excited for Blood of My Blood and season 8.
Yeah, well, stay tuned to What the Hype for more of that. And like we said, we are interested in doing more Outlander discussions, more Outlander talks for you all, if that's what you're interested in. But we're also interested in utilizing our YouTube platform to maybe do that in between these regularly scheduled episodes that drop weekly over on all of the podcast feeds. So with that being said, please make sure to head over to our YouTube channel to subscribe to that if you're interested in more bonus talk, not just for Outlander, but for all the other fandoms that we're excited about and interested in as well. And also be sure to follow us here on Twitch if you joined us today for our inaugural stream. Thank you so much for doing that. We are very much testing this out as a new way to kind of interact with you all as we do these episodes. So it would mean a lot to us if you wanted to follow us over here. And if you wanted to join us for any future Twitch streams that we'll be doing going forward. It's a new year. So we're just trying out new stuff to see what sticks.
Yeah. New year, new us, new platform, trying to get more into that multi-channel streaming area, because it's not something that we've really done before, even though we've been podcasting for a really long time. So would definitely love y'all's feedback about how we're doing as well.
Yeah. And, you can listen to the audio version of this podcast everywhere you get your podcasts. You can submit feedback for us directly on Spotify or using the contact form over on whatthehypepodcast.com. And that website also has links to all of our social media platforms. So you can follow us on Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok. We're on TikTok as well. So lots of places to interact with us and to keep in touch in between episodes. But other than that, I think that's it for me and Laura. But thank you guys for listening. And we hope you enjoyed our second episode on Outlander.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.